Hello SpaceWatchers, I'm Emma, the editor-in-chief of SpaceWatch.Global, and this is a new episode of Café Radio, your radio channel dedicated to emerging trends and live conferences in the space sector. Hello SpaceWatchers, today I have the pleasure to have here with me two high-level representatives of HyImpulse. With us, we have Mario Cobal, the co-founder and CEO. Mario, welcome.
Nice to meet you, Emma.
And Christian Schmierer, the co-founder and co-CEO of HyImpulse. Welcome, Christian. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having us.
Fantastic. We are very happy. We have actually been following HyImpulse for a while, so I'm very pleased that finally today we have the occasion to sit down and have an in-depth chat about what's going on in your company and which type of news you're bringing us. So first of all, we're here because we know HyImpulse is about to launch in just a few weeks at the end of April, and it's going to launch a suborbital rocket from Kuniba in Australia with Southern Launch. Mario, can you help us to understand what this launch is about and why it's interesting?
Yeah, of course. This is a very important event for us. First of all, it's the first rocket launch for HyImpulse, but then also it's actually the very first German private new space launch for us. It's actually the launch of our first product already, which is a sounding rocket and is used for suborbital flights, for experiments in microgravity and also atmospheric research. And second of all, it's also a demonstration of our technology, because most of the technology that we use, the motor, the tanks, and also avionics and so on, it will also be used on our orbital rocket, which will come up later then. And yeah, of course, it's also good to have our team already trained on with hands-on experience with an actual launch campaign and also, going through all the operational steps to get the rocket to space.
And of course, before going orbital, we prefer to go suborbital. It's a safer bet, absolutely. Thank you, Mario. Christian, I was wondering why you guys are launching from Australia instead of Europe.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. We actually wanted to launch from Europe, of course. When we chose the launch sites that we are cooperating with, we selected the launch sites that are operating like a startup. We want to have the full flexibility on the other side. If we as the CEO want to call the other CEO, it should always be possible. And that is mostly possible with a startup. And that brings, of course, a little bit of the risk because the infrastructure in a startup launch site is not always ready yet. And that's why last November we had to shift our launch to Australia because the launch site in Scotland, Saxford, where we are usually planning to launch also our orbital rocket later, was not ready yet for this launch. And so we had to shift to Australia. Actually, we were surprised by how easy it is. The transport is not that much more expensive than to UK. It's only we have to wait a few weeks until the ships arrive, and everything else was already well prepared. And therefore, it was not a big thing, actually.
Yeah, because when you think about a transport of a rocket, you always think about a huge complex process, actually. So I'm surprised that you say that it's quite easy, actually, to go to Australia.
That's, of course, when we come later to our technology, we can discuss this in more detail, because it's, of course, a unique feature of our rocket that we can do that.
Absolutely.
I agree. With a different system would be much more difficult.
So this is something that you have to tell me later. Mario, you have two launch licenses, one from Australia and one from Scotland, which are two dramatically different places. And the one in Scotland is at the Saxford spaceport on the Shetland Island. Why do you have two licenses?
Yeah, it's partially, of course, also like Christian explained before. We have had a redundant strategy with our launch sites. Both of them are startups, just like us. And of course, the launch is very important for us, and also to launch as soon as possible to show that we are ready and that our technology is ready. And also that we achieved getting to the first launch now in a very short time and also very capital efficient, actually. And because of that, to be sure that we can switch in case of the delay of one launch site, we have more or less done the parallel process to obtain licenses for both in Shetland and also in Australia. And the licenses depend, of course, on the local country, but then the overall process and the documentation is going hands in hands for one and the other. We have been able to get license for both places, and it turned out that it was also the right strategy. Only because of that we could actually switch to launch site now, like we had to do in the last year. Otherwise, the licensing process is actually something that takes quite a lot of time, and we've been working on both of them for a long time already. So if we would have done it differently, we would not be able to launch now.
So how does it work? Do you have one spaceport that is your first choice, your go-to spaceport, and then the other one serves as a kind of backup plan if one is not ready? Or it doesn't work like this? You more alternate depending on other parameters and other needs?
Yeah, we had planned, since Shetland is much closer, and we also had a different timeline with them originally. So we had planned to have them as the first launch site. But then since we had these delays with the infrastructure there, we had to switch to Australia. And but still, at the moment, we are planning for the follow-up launch also to do in Shetland, which we will announce later in the year then.
Okay, so back to the launch in mid-April. Christian, you promised me some juicy tech spec. Why this launch is significant? What is different? Why is important?
There are actually a lot of exciting new things that we bring with this launch. First, the topic that Mario explained just now is we are the first European private company to receive a launch license both in the UK and in Australia. And of course, building a rocket is very difficult, but getting a license from a regulator is probably as difficult as building the rocket. And so this is a big achievement where it can be harder, but we must say that both authorities in the UK and in Australia have been very cooperative and helpful and learned along the process with us together. And we are, in that sense, also a company that really paves the way for other companies as well. The second point is it's our first product that is flight ready. We can use it for microgravity research. We can use it for atmospheric research. We can use it for booster for other rockets, basically, or spacecraft or suborbital vehicles. So there's a huge potential market for this rocket. And then it's a tech demonstrator for a technology that is completely unique and new. So while most of our competitors in the field, both in the US and in Europe, develop rockets that are using a technology that is basically building upon the pioneers in the 50s and 60s, liquid rockets or solid rocket motors. We are using hybrid rocket technology, which means a liquid-solid combination. Our oxidizer is liquid and our fuel is solid. And that has not been launched to space very often. There have been some experiments like 50 years ago, but then it died off. And one reason was they didn't have the right fuel. And then we have identified paraffin based on previous research that Mario started already more than 20 years ago. And we used this paraffin to revolutionize hybrid technology and make it the commercial product for suborbital and orbital rockets. So this is very significant, this test flight, because it proves that our paraffin technology combined with the liquid oxygen as the oxidizer works. We as the engineers, we know that it works. We can see the test results on ground. We can extrapolate, we can calculate it, and we know that it works. But doing it is still a different step. There are still risks with every launch, especially a maiden launch. And then you also want to convince not only yourself, but also investors, future customers, and government authorities who give the license. So these are all very important steps for this first launch. And yeah, it also is a signal for the whole space industry, I would say, because there have not been many launches in the last months from Europe. And to show that one of the next launches is coming from a German new space company with only 60 employees right now. This is a very big signal for the whole European space industry.
Absolutely. I want to pick up on that later, but first I need to focus on paraffin. You say paraffin, Christian, and my mind went straight to a Wallace and Gromit cartoon, a very famous special Wallace and Gromit when they were going on the moon with with the rocket. So traditionally, as you said, small and medium payload rockets use liquid technology. You guys mentioned using hybrid technology with solid fuel made of paraffin. Mario, I need you to explain me why you're using paraffin. What is behind this choice?
Yeah, of course. So we are using a disruptive and new approach, which is hybrid rocket propulsion. And that's basically a mix of a solid fuel combined with a liquid oxidizer. And this is giving us quite a lot of advantages in performance, but also in simplicity. And in addition to that, we are using paraffin fuel, which is quite new still for this type of rocket propulsion system. It was discovered just some years ago in the 2000s at Stanford University. And we were actually the first ones to start working on this here in Europe. And basically then the starting point for HyImpulse was 2016 when we still as students and PhD students successfully started hybrid sounding rockets together. And not only the launch of that was successful, but we also achieved basically a world record for that type of propulsion system. And that was, of course, more than enough for us to understand that this is actually performant and competitive. And we wanted to build further on that. And at that time, we also found out about the emerging small satellite market. And we've been thinking on how to scale up our technology. And we saw that there is a need for cost competitive and also safe small launchers. And then we started building out the business plan and also the technology, the scale up for our orbital launcher. And then that was also the baseline to found HyImpulse then. And yeah, the simplicity in paraffin fuel and also in the hybrid propulsion system is something which then also translates directly to very competitive prices and also easy operations for us and also together for our customers.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Moving is right up there with death and divorce and the stress Olympics. But fear not. Turn that box of woes into a crate of woes with moving tips in the Life Beyond Boxes podcast with Premium Q Moving. Dive into the world of hassle-free moves, learn tips and tricks to save on cash and your sanity. Say goodbye to those moving meltdowns and hello to the smooth sailings. Or should we say smooth movings? Tune into Life Beyond Boxes with Premium Q Moving on lifebeyondboxes.com or find us on your favorite podcast platform. And with us, unpack the secrets to a stress-free move.
Of course, and congratulations for the world record. So I think it's obliged. And thank you for the explanation on the paraffin. Christian, you said something before that is really important for us, and it's completely true. I completely agree with you. Access to space is a huge problem in Europe. As you said, we don't launch much from Europe. We know that it's a problem. And I agree with you. The news that a German company with just 60 employees is actually trying to do something that for us, for Europeans, is been quite difficult. It is per se an incredible news and a really interesting point. But I would like to ask you, Christian, do you think that your rocket, HyImpulse, could resolve these massive issues for European payload companies to have actually a economically sustainable vehicle to go to space?
Yes, I believe so. And you gave exactly the right keyword, which is economically sustainable. Let's add also environmentally sustainable, but that's like a no-brainer today. But the economically sustainability is very important. And we don't have, I don't see a lot of solutions, at least in Europe, currently being developed that are economically sustainable. In the end, our customers have a huge pain point right now, and this is they need to launch in the US. And at least from what we hear, they are not always treated like the customer is king. It's more like the rocket launch company right now is the king because there is only 2 or 3 that actually can offer frequent and low cost launches. And we want to change that. And it's not solved by a single large launch vehicle like an Ariane 6, which anyway is booked for years to come already. It's also not solved by liquid small launchers, in our opinion, which have a cost issue, which we see from our competitors in the US, like Rocket Lab, Astra, Firefly, Relativity Space, all going to larger launch vehicles. And we know why that is, because they are not economically sustainable in such a small size of the payload. Because there are certain fixed costs, like the number of parts you need to produce define a lot of the costs. And here is where hybrid rocket technology comes in for especially the market of small and medium launch vehicle, let's say from 500 kilogram payload to 5,000 kilogram payload. It's really nice spot for hybrids. Hybrids have a disadvantage, which is a lower experience level. That's why we, with this suborbital launch, demonstrate that we can reach TRL 9. So the rocket is flight ready, which before was not the case. We have started from basic research, which is also something that is very unique about HyImpulse, that we had to start from the very lab scale, understanding what happens with the paraffin. And now we are going to launch, while other companies, of course, can use technology that's available in Europe, liquid technology, turbopump technology. It's all there. It's not easy to get it, I admit, and it's also not easy to master it, but it's there. And when we look at the economic reason for us, it's just by making things smaller, it will not get less expensive. And that's why all the small launch vehicles with liquid propulsion, they basically have to scale up at a point, because even with all the 3D printing that you can use and all the serial production effects you can have, you cannot go below a certain threshold. And I would say that's around 15,000 euro per kilogram for a small launch vehicle. That would be already great if you can achieve that with a liquid rocket sustainably. Of course, we see competitors in the US to offer for lower prices, but they need to consistently raise capital on the capital markets to sustain it, or use other fields of business to basically internally subsidize this market. And our rocket basically comes with less than half the components, and the components are even much cheaper. Therefore, our rockets can offer a sustainable access to space with very low cost and high launch cadence. And we don't think that we will serve all the market, but we will serve the small launcher market. And there will be, of course, a coexistence between, let's say, a rocket in 500 to 1,000 kilogram segment and the 5,000 kilogram and 10, 15, maybe even 20,000 segment in the future. And that's where we see us right now. And our technology is perfect for this medium and small launch vehicle size, because we can cut the cost by half simply by using the better technology for this size and reducing the amount of components by 50%, and therefore reducing the cost of producing the rocket by 50%.
Christian, I'm curious. You just mentioned the 50,000 euros per kilogram. So you can offer 25,000. Am I understanding correctly?
I said 15. So
15. Okay. So I understood. I knew this was some language barrier here. This is why I wanted to double check. Okay, 15. Okay, so you think you can cut it in half?
Yeah, exactly. My guess is that the best liquid small launch vehicles can come down to 15,000 euro per kilogram and still be profitable and sustainable. Of course, many of them might offer lower, but it will require continuous fundraising on the side. We can offer already in the beginning with our orbit launch vehicle prices starting from 10,000 euro per kilogram and be profitable. And then when we scale up the production, when we have first stage reusability, we can go down to 7,000 euro per kilogram, which is basically already 10-20% away then from a SpaceX pricing. But at the same time offering a completely different service, because we are a taxi to space and not a container ship where you have to wait until 50 other customers are ready to launch. They interfere with each other. The insurance is a mess, because you need to make sure that your satellite is not affecting any other customers. You need to follow the complete processes of quality that SpaceX demands. And we will be much more flexible. So we can address each customer like an individual customer and offer a service that a large launch vehicle can never offer. And at the same time, we will make it happen at almost the same price.
Yeah, of course, you're looking at segmentation of the market to serve different needs, and SpaceX is more of a wholesale retailer that, as you say, has to wait for multiple customers to fill up the cargo, while you can provide a sort of taxi service. So different approaches completely for almost the same price. Thank you very much. And definitely when you say the problem of monopoly, yes, we all know that at the moment there are no competitors. Whoever is the king makes the price. Mario, I want to pick up on something that you said, introduce a bit when you told us the story of the paraffin. Obviously, you've been in HyImpulse from its beginning, from its genesis. So maybe let's take a step back together. And can you tell me how you guys reached this point? What's the story of HyImpulse? So can you take us back at the beginning a bit?
Yeah, it actually takes already, it's quite a while since the story started, for me at least. It was when I was still an aerospace engineering student at Stuttgart University around 2006. Myself and some other students came across this topic of hybrid rocket propulsion with paraffin. And we basically started a student group together because we were all fascinated by space and by rockets, of course. And we also wanted to do some practical work in addition to all the sometimes not so interesting lectures that we had all day. And that's what we did in our free time. Basically, we started building a hybrid rocket engine, and they are based on paraffin. And this, of course, took quite some time and research, but then we succeeded actually quite fast. And 1 or 2 years later, we already got a little bit of funding, and we also had the first prototype, where we were able to successfully test also on university ground. And if you think of some students testing rocket engines in the middle of university ground, it actually sounds quite dangerous.
It was you.
But it's also only possible, I would say, thanks to the hybrid propulsion system, which is really inherently safe. And that's also what we could convince to all the officials at university, and also what our experience then also was. It was really safe if you follow some basic guidelines, and it cannot have bad outcomes like when you test liquid rocket or solid rocket engines. And also that's the experience that we have now for more than 15 years, actually even longer, and over several hundreds of tests from very small scale up to now the size of our large rocket motor that will boost our sounding rocket to space. And basically that's the story, and also the advantage of the hybrid rocket system with paraffin together.
It's also where we can close the circle, basically. So the reason why the students were able to test on the university ground without a lot of safety operations is the same why now shifting from Shetland to Australia was so easy, because we just load the rocket with the paraffin inside to the ship and send it anywhere. We don't need a special cargo permit or insurance or anything. We just ship it. Liquid oxygen is widely available in every industrial area. So in Australia, it's widely available. In Shetland, it's available. In Norway, in Sweden, everywhere liquid oxygen is available. And the paraffin, we bring it from our own factory, and it's even safe and cheap to ship because there are no special treatments necessary. And that's basically why we can reduce the prices of operations as well. So it's not only saving on the cost of the production because we need less components, it's also the operational aspects that are much cheaper than with any other rocket technology.
Thank you, Chris. And I love, Mario, as you say, in our free time, we start to build hybrid rocket engines. I wonder what you were doing not in your free time. Christian, let's do a step into the future. What's the next step for HyImpulse? What do you still need to demonstrate? And of course, I want to know when you're going to switch from suborbital to the big deal, to orbital.
Actually, we are already developing the orbital vehicles in some time. We have ESA projects running with the Boost program, where we are developing the architecture of the vehicle. The propulsion system will be the same. So the rocket engine that we fly now on the test rocket is exactly the same as the hybrid engine that will power the orbital vehicle. We need to bundle them together. We need to fix them to structures and large oxygen tanks, which we have also already developed. So everything is already on the way. We will grow the company to do that, of course, in the next months. We will prepare also a second suborbital test flight from the United Kingdom, from Sutherland Spaceport. And then we will be able to launch the orbital vehicle in about 2.5 years' time. We really think time to market is crucial, but price is more exciting and more important, which means that we're not afraid of competition being in orbit first or before us. Actually, we want a strong European space industry, and so it's great to have other companies also being there to launch hopefully soon. And we hope that all the promises that are being made by the new space industry will be kept, because it's, of course, also the reputation of this industry that is at stake. And so when we launch in 2.5 years, it will be really with a product that's cost efficient, reliable, and flexible. So we will be able to launch from Shetland for European customers. If Asian, Pacific, or Australian customers prefer to launch from Australia, we will launch from there. And we're also exploring other options of the Kourou launch site, or even launch site on other American continent countries. So we will offer very flexible service to our customers. And basically with this launch now, we already demonstrate that we can offer those flexible services.
So you're feeling confident in your product to an extent that you're not rushing, and you're happy to wait 2.5 years to make sure that it's ready and fantastic. I'm looking forward. Well, I suppose we're going to hear from you again after this launch, obviously, because now we want to know how you went. So this is not a goodbye. We will talk again. And then I'm looking forward in 2.5 years to catch up and understand how you went, because this is exciting. This is important for Europe. And of course, it's a pleasure for us to give a spotlight to companies that are based in Europe and are working in this such a complex but extremely satisfying field. Christian, Mario, I thank you a lot for being here with me today. You told me things that I didn't know. Anything else you would like to add that I didn't ask you?
I think what is interesting for the audience is that our rocket is currently on the last leg of the transport route from Singapore to Australia. By the time this recording will be aired, it's probably almost there. And the launch is planned for the last week of April, going into May. The launch window will open then. And we will keep everyone updated as soon as we get closer to the launch date, and follow our social media accounts, where we will also publish information frequently.
Mario?
Yeah, I think that's an important point. End of April will be the hot phase, and also our team is preparing already to depart in mid of April. The launch team going to Australia, and then it will be an exciting time the next weeks for us.
Fantastic. Fingers crossed. Good luck. And thank you very much for being here with me today. Space Watch out. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Mario.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
If you want to keep the pulse of the space industry, please visit our website at www.SpaceWatch.Global. Subscribe to our newsletters, and of course, don't forget to become a Space Watcher. I'm Emma Gatti, Editor-in-Chief of SpaceWatch.Global, your independent perspective on space. See you next time. Ciao.